Oh my goodness, ladies and gentlemen, it is none other than Thursday, April 21st, 2011, and this is Day 9 Daily number 291. My chair, still a little squeaky, but that's fine. It adds personality and flair to the cast. Welcome to the Day 9 Daily, where we learn to be a better gamer. A little bit of a delay today, started 30 minutes late, but you know what? It's a real story of heroism. In fact, there was something going wrong server side. We called ZvT, they answer in 10 seconds and start working to fix the problem. And they fixed it same day. That's so great. We didn't even get rerouted to someone who was like, just unplug the servers and plug them back in again. Big thanks to ABCD in the chat for that joke. Yeah. And exciting news, we have some announcements to do today. Oh my goodness, how excited I am to let you know the following. First and foremost, the Day 9 Daily is now in Australia. Yeah! That's right, on iiNet, the ISP. You can now watch the Day 9 Daily quota free. Yeah, that's right. You can watch Infinite Day 9 Daily in Australia. Interestingly enough, one of the motivations for this is the fact that people were requesting hard drives for me to send. They're like, I'm out of quota. I need you to send me the dailies because I can't watch them. So rather than just being like, no, anyone can watch now for free. So that's awesome. Another exciting news, the IGN Pro League is literally running right now. And I'd like to say that it looks beautiful. Oh my gosh. I'd like to give an extra special shout out, not just to IGN for, putting the whole league together, but also to the wellplayed.org folks for making it look sexy. Wellplayed.org. I still have this shirt on. Yeah, look at this. I should have been wearing this today, man. Look at this. Yeah, that's right. I got a shirt. Don't think I don't. Boom. Oops, I'm going to shut the door so that way you don't hear the screams from people playing video games out in the hall. But anyways, today I would like to announce something extra special. It is the Day 9 TV subscription service. What does this mean? I'm going to call it the Day 9 Daily Voluntary Subscription Service because you don't actually have to do it. That is right. If you would like to sign up, you can. And if you don't want to, nothing will change. Literally nothing. It's all still free. The whole point is that people were so incredibly kind as to create donations and just hand them to me. And now we have the subscription service to not only make that easier, but to also give you the chance to get a little bit back. Right now, you get some fancy chat badges. What are the other features? All ads are removed if you get the subscription. It should be right below on day9.tv. It's on the Justin TV little link thing to sign up. But also there's going to be more fun events for people who are volunteering to donate in the future. Because now that I'm slowly finishing up with grad school, oh thank God, now I can go full-time into StarCraft. So yeah, so that gives us a chance to take anything that is generated revenue-wise and churn it into projects. Ooh. But again, the whole point is that it's voluntary. You don't have to do anything. Literally nothing will change. But I'd like you to know that those chat badges are very fancy. Now, it costs $5 US American dollars. So hopefully that's not breaking the bank. And that, I think, is it. Oh yeah, there's a code Day9 Alpha. Yeah, and that will give you April for free. Yeah, because I'm smart with marketing. I just want everyone to just have a free month. Generally, they do that, like on the bottom of a Snapple, there's a secret code, and I just sort of announce it to everyone. Bam! That's how we roll. So I'll mention that a couple times. But I don't really want to beat you to death with it because the real point of the Day 9 Daily is the fact that we get to watch Sheth again. That is right. Yesterday was Friendday Wednesday with Sheth. And that was actually a really fun daily for me because a lot of times when we bring someone on as a guest on Friendday Wednesday, they have this kind of, super brilliant aspect, where they're like, yes, and if we count the number of seconds here, we see that it is an exactly 6.2 second window. We've had a lot of really, really genius people come on. And not only was Sheth equally genius, but he had this humanness where it was like, so what do you think of this position, Sheth? He's like, well, I felt horrible. I was bummed out. And that was his feedback on it. And I was like, I get bummed out in those spots too. And he gave 2 replays. There was the Zerg vs. Zerg that was sweet, right? It was a really crazy sort of comeback. And then there was a Zerg vs. Terran that we didn't get the chance to see, but was an insane game. So I wanted to bring that to you. I'm going to make the announcements for next week's stuff, like for Fun and Monday, Newbie Tuesday, at the end of this because I want to hop into the game. I want to jump into that right now. Let's go ahead and hit it. Yeah, FXO Sheth spawning in the bottom right corner. This is Tal'Darim Altar. And the enemy, one Sonky, who of course many folks up and down top corners are going to be doing and by top corners I mean like top ranking leagues, what happened is I lost my train of thought. Can I just say that sometimes I lose my train of thought and I'm like, he's just the top, just high up, the zenith of the, you play against him. And that's what I was trying to find, but that's fine. I'll get an MRI soon. I'll find out if I have any brain problems. The important note is that Sankey is one of the high-ranked master players. He might even be grandmaster, I don't know. But either way, many fine folks in one. He's spawning in the top left. Now, this game is a very, 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 very long game. So, we are going to be going through this relatively fast. Going to be going through it relatively quickly. So, FXO Sheth scooting around, doing all that good jazz. Moving around with his overlords. Now, because the map is huge, we want to open up with a fairly reasonable style opening and early expand. So that really is going to be the first half of this daily, is looking at Sheth's play and going, how does one open in a reasonable fashion on a map this big? What are some of their considerations? Notice this pool gets thrown down pretty reasonably timed, but we're going to see a lot of drones move out early on. Now, one of Sheth's principles that he says that he always has in all of his play is it's less about when I take gases and when I build structures and more about, where are you, little larva? He wants to have no larva hanging out. And I'm sure many of you have had this experience when you're playing Zerg where you're infusing larva, trying to be all timely, make more larva, go queens, and suddenly you build some structures and then all the larva pops off and you have like no way to spend that money. You know, you might have like 400 minerals, and you're like, oops, getting high. You throw down a Hydra Den and a Spire, and then all your larva pops out, and you're broke. That's what Sheth tries to avoid. He wants to be able to spend that larva right away. So things end up doing a little bit longer when we end up doing that. So that's fine, though. That's the important principle to Sheth's play. It might take us a little longer to get some of those structures started, but that's okay because we just have so much stuff. So there's Sheth making himself some drones. Sankey doing, I would call one of the more standard openings that we're seeing Terran players do, just wall themselves right on in. Going to be getting an orbital command here whenever he can afford it. I actually think this is quite smart. If you can't afford an orbital command, to just do what you can in the meantime. A lot of times I see people just sit with a command center doing nothing for a really long time, opting to get an orbital command out. But I think I like that quite a bit. We're seeing Sheth now. He's going to be making a Roach Warren. One of the reasons why we're making a Roach Warren on this map is that this is a huge area to defend. I mean, in general, you want to have defense against early pushes. That's pretty typical. You might make spine crawlers. You might try to close those paths off. But on a map like this, it's also reasonable to build some roaches early on. On a map like Zelnaga Caverns, you might also want to build a Roach Warren early on for this very reason. On a map like Shattered Temple, might be a little less inclined to do that, because it's a little bit easier of a space to manage. So, nothing too out of the ordinary here. But one thing that I always consistently love about watching Sheth play, and watching lots of good Zerg players play, is that they're not just defensive players. I'm going to make the Roach not just to defend against any sort of early push, but to also put pressure back. And that's a consistent theme you'll see of all good play. It's not just defensive, you know. If you are making some sort of Spire to get Corruptors out, just in case he's doing some air, you might want to invest in Mutalisks as well to be able to do a little bit of damage. Or you might want to be going crazy aggro with those Corruptors early on. So here we see Sankey experiencing a little bit of hurt. And what's happening in the meantime for Sheth? Nothing but drones being made. So much dronage, even rallying here to kill off the destructible rocks. Excellent. Again, we're not going to spend the longest amount of time at the early stages of the game. We just want to spend enough time to get some general themes from Sheth. Still no extra gas here, still no gases here, but my goodness, note that Sheth never has larva hanging at those hatches. Ever. His energy on his queens, very low. His money, overall, very low. And I want to pull this back to the same principle we heard Sheth mention yesterday. That he only really cares a lot about making sure he has no larva. That's his main goal. Not about rushing to get things. We're noticing, look at this layer just now started, gas just now started. But I want to point to the food count to you, 75 to 53, just by making sure he spends all his larva. He's getting ahead in food. I'm kind of beating you in the head with this point, but that's important. It's a really simple idea. It's so easy if you know you're a gold or platinum level player striving for diamond or masters to just think to yourself, ugh, I need to remember this little thing and that and that and that and that. Whereas a player like Sheth, clearly good as he's the #1 ranked player in the world on the ladders as of the recording of this podcast, he has a very simple principle that guides him in terms of thought. I have to say something to my mods. Just want to make sure that they're properly moderating those beautiful, pretty mods. So anyways, we see Sheth now doing the Baneling Nest. He's getting an Evolution Chamber for upgrades. I don't think anyone is getting surprised by this. Here's another Evolution Chamber. Creep Spread from Sheth. Not actually as good as we'd like, but that's fine. He said that yesterday that was one of the big things he was working to pick off. Suicide's in with an Overlord. Let's see what Sheth has seen thus far. Pretty much just the front. We even see him getting the speed carapace for the Overlords. So now we're going to slow the game down a little bit. I think that at this point... Come on, StarCraft 2. Come on. Come on, StarCraft 2. Hey! Error reporter! Yes! Just ended up dying. That is fantastic. Let's just hit cancel. That is perfect. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to reopen StarCraft 2. We're going to try that again. I'm telling you, man, 1.3.2 is unstable. So let's go ahead and pull that off. But whatever, you know, up to that point in the game, we saw Sheth, again, using some of those guiding principles to get exactly where he was. But I think that for any player who's trying to, you know, be like Sheth, what's so nice about that is that the techniques we learned in the Newbie Tuesday for this week and last week, the one about stealing a build and refining it, those ideas are so applicable to exactly the way that Sheth is playing, that you just sort of pick, okay, these are the overall structures that I want in groups. Definitely rewatch those. And you could easily get to the same position as Sheth. However, the game is going to get into kind of a stalemate-ish position coming up in a moment. And that is what I really wanted to be the focus of the daily. Alright, good. It couldn't be more centered. I'm going to speed up until we're at the 10-minute and 30-second mark. Now enjoy me drinking this water. Perfection. As usual, we're going to see Sheth get the upgrades. He has some roaches. He's getting speed. Generally going for some of the bigger, more mass-type units, as opposed to the cuter, more like Infestor, Mutalisk type stuff. I don't think there's anything wrong with doing either. But you got to think about how on Tal'Darim Altar, that makes a lot of sense. With these huge, wide-open spaces, why not just get a lot of roaches and zerglings and banelings? We can crunch in from all sorts of angles. So, bouncing right back into the game, which I see is almost back to where we were before. Now, thanks to the error report crashing, we can re-review these last few seconds. We haven't really taken a big look as to what one Sonky's doing, but he is playing ultra defensive mode like, going 2 factory tank before he really even has that many barracks up and running. And here's exactly where we were before. There are the tanks sieging. We see this 1 barracks from Sonky pulling right on back. Sheth re-expanding to a 3rd, or not re-expanding, but just expanding for the first time to a 3rd, moving more drones. Here's an infestation pit coming down. This is all the usual good stuff you see out of a Zerg in the mid-game, right? Upgrades, Banelings with speed. Viking might be a little bit more on the unusual end, but that's fine. Infestation pit to get any sort of tech up. Looks good, right? Looks great. Now this is what almost every good turtling player will do, except for the really bad ones or the really, really good ones. They will do lots of harassment. Now if you're really bad and you don't do harassment, that's an easy way for you to fall behind really fast. If you're incredibly good, sometimes there are some amazing timing pushes you can discover, but for the most part, Sonky's playing it right. He's doing harassment while he turtles up, he has everything rallied back. He's getting lots of medevacs to continue to get that count higher. He's getting his upgrades going. And in many circumstances, your average Zerg Bear would be thinking to himself, yeah, you know what, I got Terran in a good position. I mean, I know he has this expansion over here, but I'm taking the whole map. Early Hive from Sheth. That's a play that I like quite a bit. I think that's important to do in all matchups now as Zerg. Get a relatively fast Hive because, let's face it, Broodlords kick ass and there's really no way to do what Broodlords do with any sort of mid-game mix. We see more expansions going down. And in the unit counting station we see oodles of drones. You might not be able to read that clearly, but that is 87 drones. And we see many infestors popping out. More dropping going on. So at this phase in the game, we see that Sheth is having to play a little bit pulled back. He's mass expanding though, getting a lot of infestors, getting his defensive stuff up. But there's a little bit of a danger because he doesn't have control over all the watchtowers that he wants. And with this harassment going on all over the place, and him expanding to all these different sides of the map, it's not going to be the best situation. And in particular, especially when this moment happens, this is where unorthodoxy really comes into play. So good, we have now finished part 1 of this daily, and we're 15 minutes in. Good. So what this means now is we're going to look at the important aspect to this game, which is decision-making in a situation that might be a little bit unusual. In the usual strands of play that you see Zergs play out, Zerg takes 3 bases and wins. That's their period. And then as he's winning, he gets a 4th and a 5th. If you take 3 bases and lose 1, typically that's because you're about to lose, right? Typically that's what's about to happen. Instead, what we're going to see happen in this game is Sheth is going to be in an awkward situation, but he hasn't lost. He lost an Expo due to some cute placement from one Sonky, but we have more expansions popping up for Sheth. We're going to see him continue to play this out. Now, in terms of your typical decision-making, anytime you're starting to get up against the wall, there's always a list of things that I start running down in my head. Scouting for expansions. This is a very stoppable offense, but if you're ever trying to get back on your feet, and you're thinking too much of yourself, you are distracted. And this is actually exactly what one Sonky wants. Anytime you're feeling a little bit off, it's because you're getting distracted, and it's important that you not be distracted. It's important that you remember to scout these expansions, remember to do little counterattacks, remember to hold your watchtowers. So I really think that even though I would say that Sheth is overall playing quite well, he's starting to fall behind. He's doing some of these panic mode moves, like getting a lot of Zerglings up. And oh, how tragic, Sonky's found the money spot where you can place tanks, and a lot of those basic units can't do much. Infested Terran, oh, do manage to take out the medevac. Very good. So here is a very unusual situation. As a Zerg, we have 5 bases spread out quite awkwardly. We're losing them, we're sort of regaining them. These 2 spine crawlers are going to end up dying. We see no real attempts at doing much of anything for Sheth. And Sonky has a very clear vector of play. He is just doing as much aggression with drops as he can, while he builds up a giganto army at home with tons of upgrades. He could get a second engineering bay or armory, but he's choosing not to, which I think is bad. Ooh, and now we have a lot of starports coming down. Probably going to be battle cruisers coming up. Here comes Sonky doing a drop here, and at the top he's doing another drop over here. Sheth is getting caught off guard. And this is one thing that I think is very concerning for an average Zerg player. Having everything in one control group. We see that there's some stuff being left behind here in the middle, and you've got to make sure you leave some stuff behind, because what you do not want to have happen is, a couple of drops start swinging around all over the place, and while you're trying to clean up these medevacs, this drop ends up coming in. Oh, Sheth. Oh, no. Oh, gosh. Sheth. This stings to see. Now we're seeing 1,000,000 reactors get thrown down. That was kind of surprising to me. I thought it would have been going battle cruiser. But either way, I think this is a great example of how Terran can really lock down a map. Just expand a lot, get all planetary fortresses, take the planetary fortress over here, take another expansion over here, feeling good, feeling great. In general, though, I think we see a lot of players like Sheth and TLO opting for this pretty typical mix, pretty atypical mix of Zerglings, Roaches, and Infestors. And I think people are starting to drift towards that, drifting away from your Ling, Baneling, Muta combo. But a lot of Zerg players will agree that you kind of have to just get a Spire in case these drops go crazy. And even if you don't want to get Mutalisk to harass, make sure you get the Spire so you could build like some Corruptors, at least, to end up picking off some of these things. There are the Lings, Banelings, Roaches, cleaning everything up. Obviously an extremely potent composition. But now that we have our Hive up, oh, finally we have some Mutalisks out. Oh, thank God we have just 5 Mutalisks up. That's going to be enough. It's going to be plenty, plenty, plenty. I'm actually going to come back here and just think for a moment, what the heck is one Sonky going to do? with a bunch of reactored starports, and he's getting another reactor. If he goes Mass Viking, I'm going to laugh. I will absolutely begin giggling. So we're seeing Sheth continue to do his usual expanding antics, and the one thing that is an important non-decision from Sheth is that he has not attacked once in this game. It is very easy to feel screwed and to suddenly be like, ugh, I gotta do something right now. However, I mean, and that's sloppy, don't lose your noodles for nothing. Note that the two players, because they're so close to maxed, are relatively okay. Well, both of them are pretty even. We do see that the Terran player in the resource tab has way more money coming in. Even in the income, we see that the Terran is quite a ways ahead. 113 harvesters. Actually, too many harvesters from Terran. But that's okay because, at max, the Zerg is just kind of trying to delay until he can get some Broodlords up. Always make sure that you're aware of what units you want to be using to end the game with. And the fact that Sheth is not attacking, waiting for those Broodlords, very, very good. So he's going to be making his first movement out, going to take out all these Overlords. We see a whole bunch of Banelings getting morphed in. Baneling's another one of those key units that will allow you to attack. And Sheth is going to continue to just get abused all over the place. All the expansions on the fringes, getting murdered. Now, from a Terran point of view, this is very smart play. Notice Terran has only attacked this base and this base. And once he poked in here and ended up losing everything. This is just good tactical decision-making by Terran to just pick these 2 points and to just drill into them. No other reason to go elsewhere. No reason to just start dropping into the main, because Terran is just happily taking the whole frickin' map with as many bases as he can afford. And again, we see the importance of having just one Corruptor. You can take it out with just one, just uno Corruptor. I'm a little concerned because Terran has 117 harvesters. He's going to be having the best income in the whole wide world. Haven't even seen any of these starports get any use made out of them, but one Thonky looks like he is going to town with the unit producing structure count. He's going to be just sacking as many Marines and Marauders as he can and replenishing, it looks like, with the Meteor units. But I'm curious to see how this craziness is going to end up panning out, because Terran just has so much frickin' money and is expanding more. This game is actually very, very long. We're not even halfway done with this game. We're seeing more drops go on by Terran. Very smart dropping action, continuing to pick at these 2 locations over and over and over again. And Zerg continuing to play passively throughout the whole game. Can't emphasize enough how important it is to note that Terran is not doing anything different than just attacking these 2 bases, and it's costing Zerg a lot of time and energy. And now Terran's at 7,500, 2,500. And now comes the awesomeness. Here comes the cool moment. We have Banelings morphing here. We have Zerglings. Looks like they're going for the main. They're going to get dropped in here. We have a force coming in over here. This is how a good Zerg looks. It's, there's this kind of optical illusion that can happen if you are very, very aggressive, where, you know, you're losing a lot of bases, and you try to mount a counterattack, you try to pull back, where you'll lose a lot of, or you'll win a lot of weird games, where you held off a drop, you counterattacked, not feeling so great about it, and you amazingly broke the front and won. Or other times, you'll almost break the front, but then you'll lose all your units, and then you won't have any more bases because he killed them off with harassment. And you'll think to yourself, maybe if I got a little bit more, maybe if I scattered with an Overlord and little tiny, and it feels like you're working in the smallest box possible, and it'll feel horrible. This is how a good Zerg looks. He just says, screw all those crazy moments where I could have won by maybe pulling miracles with scouting and this and that. And Zerg's just holding on and holding on and holding on. And then I want you to just look at the structure of the bases. If we look down here, we see spine crawlers, 3 of them down, a lot of drones. Up here, spine crawlers. Although it's finished, we do have some defense established here. We now have all our tech structures that we want done. Look at this. We have 3 upgrades. We have the Ultralisk Cavern almost finished with this chitinous plating, which I now know how to pronounce. Yeah, we have Greater Spire done. Another spine crawler here. Do we have any spines in the main? Well, none there. We even have some guys mining gas at these extractors. In a sense, everything that we kind of want to be up and operational suddenly is. Now, I'm actually going to take a moment to, here's a little tease, you guys. I'm going to slide this overlay on over. Ooh, you see that? I'm going to pull this back to a little while ago. This is the sort of funny compare and contrast that can happen if you just sort of look at the differences between the bases, right? So Zerg now trying to get a hive up. Just now starting 2-2. Terran doing drops here. Zerg losing this, not really able to get this base up. Trying to come back here, trying to get some defenses up. Hive's done. Is the Greater Spire started? No, in fact, the Spire at all hasn't even been started. But if we look back at the Terran's base, Terran is pretty much has been in the same spot for a long time. Terran already has all his infrastructure up. Zerg is trying to catch up. If we tried to bust in on Terran right now, he'd have a huge freaking army of tanks and Marines and Marauders at the front, and we wouldn't have our Ultralisk Cavern. We wouldn't have 3-3 upgrades. We wouldn't have this well defended. This is why being patient and just trying to get your footing back and not try to be over-aggressive, that's why doing that as Zerg in a situation like this is so important, because Terran is essentially bouncing back to the same spot again and again and again and again and again. Terran is just, Terran is just bouncing back to the same spot again and again and again. He's going to end up with some tanks. He's going to end up with some Marines and Marauders. He's going to end up with a lot of factories and a lot of starports. And he's just going to continually be making units and trying to batter Zerg down again and again and again. So though it might feel like as Zerg, oh, I lost this expansion 3 times and this expansion twice. Oh, this game's going horribly. You're actually catching up slowly as Zerg. Again, the infrastructure in Terran's base hasn't really changed at all. Oh, all right, yeah, I guess he's going to get more barracks. So we can do more of the same. But as Zerg, you're actually developing new, better pieces of tech, etc. This patience really pays off as Sheth. And suddenly, if Zerg ends up attacking right now, he's attacking with Banelings that are 3-3. He's attacking with drops. He's attacking with Broodlords. And Terran is still in the same position. If Sheth attacked Terran earlier, Sheth would not have all those fancy hive tech units, and Sonky would still have the exact same sort of stuff that he does have. So this is what we call momentum style play, where you're just accepting a beating for a long amount of time. And then you suddenly explode forward with these gigantic swells of force, dropping in multiple locations. And I'm sure as Sheth, you're going to be a little bit shocked to see an expansion here, rolling in here. Probably wants to not let the Banelings crash into that, letting a few end up knocking it down. But Sheth looks shockingly stable. Shockingly stable. Would love to see some more spine crawlers here, but in particular, a lot of guys mining gas at all locations. And we see a drop coming on. Another drop going on by Sheth. And the funny thing to note is that from a Terran point of view, there's nothing new happening. Oh yeah, look, Terran's still dropping here. Terran's still dropping here. Terran's still massing up tanks at the front here. But suddenly, Zerg is not the one losing and losing and losing and defending and defending. Zerg's actually the aggressor. From the Terran point of view, it's great that Terran was picking these 2 places as points to pierce, but you really have to follow that up with a big, strong push that can kill the Zerg off before he ends up getting to all his fancy hive tech, because that's really where Zerg ends up doing the winning. We're almost halfway done with this game. Goodness, goodness, how do you end up managing? So now we see all the Vikings moving out for Sonky. This is a really smart play on a number of levels. Obviously, we want to deal with the Broodlords, but as a Zerg who's going to be spread out, Sheth is going to have a hard time holding off the Vikings from this many angles. So Sheth is going to be doing the usual thing. He's still just trying to hold on as much as possible, but he's going to have his death ball moving forward to try to kill off expansion. And there's the rolling. Very good. Killing it all off. Excelente. And now Sonky is going to be continuing to try to kill off as many overlords as possible. But I love some of these rally points for Sheth, just leaving units back here. This rally point is actually less important. Having things rallied to these corner expansions is what's key. And what Sheth is going to do, again, is just pull back. He's going to kill off these fringes. He's going to continue to expand. And now we're in maxed army versus maxed army mode, which is one of the greatest moments to be in ever, because it happens actually a lot in StarCraft 2. And I think in Brood War, I would kind of stick more to just talking about early game, mid game, and late game plans, because rarely would anyone ever really get maxed. You generally see people, like a 160 food army was huge and all this jazz. But in StarCraft 2, there's a lot of, like, we're both maxed and no one's really attacking each other, and we're stockpiling gigantic sums of money. And that is like a new style of play. There's like early game, mid game, late game, and now max style resource management. So let's look at that. Yes. In this particular situation, what should the Zerg be doing? What should the Zerg be doing? In my eyes, the Zerg should be trying to accumulate as much gas as possible. In early and mid game, you need a lot of minerals. You need to be getting your roaches, you need to be getting your Zerglings, you need to be getting just more expansions up. All those require minerals. But now that you have all your tech done, all your tech out of the way, the really good units that you want to be having as the core of your composition are Infestors, Banelings, Ultralisks, and Broodlords. Start doing a lot of expanding, and another good question, do you want to be attacking the Terran a lot, or do you want to be starving the Terran a lot? If you're trying to break a lot of pushes, you should be getting a lot more Broodlords. If you're trying to be hitting him from a lot of different angles and trying to prevent him from moving out, maybe you want more Infestors, maybe you want more Ultralisks. So this Sonky's continuing to try to just drop and kill stuff off. Here sees Sheth work his way in here, killing stuff off with his armies. The Vikings continuing to do damage. It looks like Sonky's whole game plan is literally harass the opponent to death and make sure your front's defended. Look at this, Planetary Fortressing in the middle, love it. Great, great, great play to do on this map. Even getting the high-sec auto-tracking, which is the range upgrade for your turrets and your Planetary Fortresses. Sheth swinging his Infestors in, gotta be a little careful with the Vikings, because it's sort of tragic, humiliating experience where everything gets taken off, it's going down. And now we're starting to see a couple of little differences from Sheth and your average Zerg. Just planting Spore Crawlers in the middle of frickin' nowhere. Why? Because it helps cut down on air movement. Those drops are being obnoxious. And Sheth is playing this out very smartly. He's just trying to cut down on the number of expansions of the opponent. And there's this kind of funny experience that will happen with a lot of gameplay where, let's say Sonky's just trying to take this. You might think to yourself, man, I gotta kill that before it gets up and running. And then it gets up and running, and you think, man, I gotta really try to devote everything to killing that off. And then you do, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But then after a while, you're just thinking, alright, I'm gonna let him have that and just try to prevent him from getting this base up. Again, gotta make sure you have some good scouting. Zerg's gonna be throwing down as many spine crawlers as possible, and this, I think, might be a little bit of a danger for Sheth. To try to go for the main, to try to go straight for the jugular. We're seeing Sheth play very clearly defensively. If you're low on money like this, you cannot afford to try to just suicide counterattack all in. Sonky's doing some really amazing good stuff here. Sheth is going to be splitting up his army, but mainly taking his army around just to defend, 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 defend. This is actually kind of a crazy play from Sonky. He's just literally expanding and dropping and never engaging in a direct way. He's like 3-2. I've never even seen his army get very big at all. And he has like all these tanks here. Look at all these reactor ports. This is kind of a clever way to play, because in a sense, what you're saying as Terran is, whatever units I lose, I can replenish with the right ones immediately. So oopsie daisies. Broodlords, I guess I'll just replenish with Vikings. So Sonky now dropping, more fungal growths going down. We see some drones getting produced, and as time progresses, I'm going to continue to direct you up to this production tab just to note what Sheth is replenishing with. We still see he has 13 roaches. We still see he has a Baneling out there on the field, but we're not going to see as much of that continue. We're not going to see as much of that in the production tab. There's some Zerglings tragically losing their lives. Roaches advancing forward. As Sheth, you could have mobile units like Zerglings, like Roaches, but you want to be replacing those out with Spine Crawlers for defense, and relying more on fungal growths and corruptors. So one Sonky, never gonna stop dropping. The one mistake I think Sheth is making is not leaving Infestors just sort of around enough. That can be a huge benefit to just letting you stay alive. But you know how we saw Terran just attack this expansion and this expansion in the early stages? Now we're just seeing Zerg attack this base and then this base up at the top. I cannot believe how many insane games Sheth ends up putting himself in. So Sheth's now going to trundle this same army that has been wandering to the same places on the map again to hold off the millionth drop. Ooh, drone gets a kill. Baller City, USA. And we're going to see Sheth continue to work his way in. It's almost in a slugfest situation. And again, it might feel that way, but it is important that you have good max army versus max army logic. And now the nukes are coming out. Wow, why didn't I do this for a Fun Day Monday? This game's actually getting pretty awesome. But either way, Sheth is actually in a little bit of a dangerous territory because he chose to expand here first. This was one of the early choices of him expanding. Now, I actually don't like this as an expansion. I prefer this one as an expo because it's easier to access by ground. It falls in line more with defending this expansion. And the funny thing that happens once we get to these max point is the discussion transitions away from what units we're getting and what upgrades we're getting and what tactics we do, because we already have all of them, right? We can already do drops or do all that sort of good stuff. The important thing at this stage is more of a Brood War style discussion. It's more of where are our units idly sitting on the map, where can we freely move, and most importantly of all, where are our expanding patterns? This is probably the most key idea when we get max, is where our expanding patterns are. We want to expand in broad sweeping scooping patterns. Like for me, I'm going to stop trying to expand up here at all. I'm going to try to take this and then try to take this. Why is that? Because if we just look at the map, the structure, if I leave everything at this watchtower, just look at the mini-map with me. If I'm at this watchtower, I can easily go down to this bottom base or any of these bottom left ones with the same patch of ground. This one is actually out of the way for me, and that's one of the ways that Terran's actually been able to consistently exploit Sheth. And you know what? If this base got taken out, I would actually re-expand to this base. I would not keep trying to re-expand to the same location. Little tiny Zergling counterattacks I think should be happening more. Sheth just has to be keeping an eye on all these expansions, because these expansions just keep popping up for Terran again and again and again. And now that Sheth is finally going to be able to take all this stuff out, he's going to be in fantastic shape to just play a nice defensive game. He's going to lose his main, and that stinks, and that's unfortunate. He's going to try to, you know, waltz an Ultralisk in, he's going to lose the Ultralisk, he's going to pick off the drop. But now, here are some important frickin' questions. Why is this the worst Ultralisk placement in the world? Because it is in the most easily attackable location in the universe. It's kind of funny how easy it is to just not realize that you've fallen into these thought patterns. You know, like for me, you know, like, okay, my main is where I build my tech structures. And sometimes I'll build my tech structures at my natural expansion. But when things are starting to die, like this, when things are starting to die, you gotta ask yourself, where am I rebuilding it? And a lot of times the answer is, I don't know, wherever. Probably closest to my main. You want to place the buildings in the most easily defendable location, which a lot of times is in line with where you're expanding. In a lot of circumstances, where you're expanding to is where you should be building those more important structures. For me, I would want to be rebuilding my stuff here or here, and then be devoting more of my drones here and more of my spine crawlers here. These are just really vulnerable locations. And notice how inconsistent it is. A dried up expansion. A vulnerable, almost dried up expansion. These are not places we're going to be much longer. But fresh, new expansions, where my opponent's likely to be attacking me a lot, that's where all my units are going to be. So that's going to be in line. Ouch, that hurt. It's going to be in line with my expanding patterns. Either way, Sankey continuing to be a jerk. Hold down on all these expansions. I wonder if Sankey will actually ever move out to attack, or whether he's just going to mass command center his way in. And a ghost coming in. Oh my gosh, here comes... Oh, is it a nuke? No way. Is this game real? Is this real? And there's the nuke. Let's see if Sheth spots it. There's the dot. Is he gonna spot it? I'm gonna vote no. Oh, yeah, let's vomit larva. Uh-oh. Wait a minute, that didn't go so well. But at least I'll be able to macro in a moment. And there's the drop from Sankey. And actually, I wanna actually back up from that moment of awesomeness to point out this exact idea of having your units where they need to be to defend. Where's that ghost? There it is. So here comes the huge push from Sheth. Here comes another ghost moving down here to this bottom side. And notice, uh-oh, the drone's getting pulled out. It looks like he assumed it was at that expansion. See, we have all these units up here not really defending anything and not really attacking anything either. So suddenly this area is vulnerable, suddenly this area is vulnerable, as you will note. This area took a little bit of a hit. We see 4 more nukes going down. Sonky's managed to pick off this expansion. And as everything moves here, again, we're going to, I guess, now focus on the unit positioning compared to this extremely vulnerable Ultralisk Cavern. And wait a minute, we're morphing this as a layer? Well, if we're morphing this as a layer, then now this becomes a smarter place to expand to. But again, notice, by taking this expansion, hey, this, trying to defend this, ooh, God, this is really hard. This expansion should be here. That's going to be a lot easier to defend. Now, it might sound like I'm implying that you should always expand to close together positions. That's not necessarily the case. You should expand in a way that's easiest to defend. And if you have slow-ass units like Broodlords, Ultralisks, Banelings, and Infestors, expand tight, put your buildings close together, and be in good shape. What if I'm doing a mass Mutalisk, mass Zergling army? God, expand to the far reaches of the universe. That's going to be the more correct decision. Because then you can isolate, you can counterattack, you can use the mobility of these units to your advantage. But here we're seeing the tragedy of having an immobile army. Well, fortunately, because Sheth is replenishing with these really strong units. Remember earlier he had 13 roaches? Now it's only 7 because he's been replacing with Ultralisks, he's been replacing with Broodlords, he's been replacing with Infestors. Good stuff. I heard a nuke go off. There it is. We found it. Thank God the Spinecrawler got up in time. Keep mining, guys. It's cool. Uh-oh. Perhaps not the best decision. Yeah, poor Sheth trying to run all over everywhere. There goes down that expansion. Actually, Sheth has 1.2 bases mining, I would call it. Oh, there's another nuke going down. Will all of these nukes hit? I don't think Sheth has actually defended against a single nuke. Ugh. There's another nuke going down. Uh-oh. Oh, get out of there. Hey. Oh, and another nuke landing right down on top of it. Will he kill it? Oh, the ghosts scream the loudest scream in the game. And Sonky continues his obnoxious, harassing antics, which is actually a pretty cool way to play. And we're noting that these sort of Zergling counterattacks, yeah, Zerglings are going to operate the exact opposite of all these sorts of forces. They can easily do this sort of thing. So you have Mutalisks or Nidus Worms, you can be all over the place with this sort of jazz. In fact, Nidus Worming for Sheth would be an extremely effective way to do some damage here. If you had a Nidus Worm, I don't know, just like here, just in a random spot on the map, or even like here, and then linking it back to this base. That would be very, very nice. Now we see the hatch getting upgraded to a layer, so that way he'll have more hit points. But the one thing that I think Sheth doesn't know is that this isn't Brood War. You don't actually get a health boost. It's going to pop out on the verge of death. As usual, this is one of the greatest moments. I actually did that in beta once, and I had an incredibly tragic moment where I was like, wait a minute, that didn't help at all. So Sheth, I would say up to this point in the game, has been losing, right? Just a slow, steady, painful losing experience, and Sonky just attacking the Zerg wherever he is not. Dropping here, dropping there, doing some nuking. And every time that Sheth has managed to start pulling ahead, it's when he's done these little tiny attacks that have focused on eliminating expansions. Look at this, here's the drop here. Oh no, look at these hugely vulnerable structures. Oh no. And Sheth fortunately managing to take this out in time, but you know what? Here's a little counter going on by Sheth, or excuse me, by Sonky. And hey, look at this Ultralisk Cavern that we pointed out as a huge vulnerability a long time ago. It turned out that was true. And don't these expansions just suddenly look naked to you? Yeah, see, by the way, look, layer finished. 81 hit points. Orange, you glad you upgraded your layer. You see what I'm talking about? See what I'm talking about? Consistency of placement? See what I mean? Ugh. Oh no. Now that we're done holding that off, I mean, is there any drops coming in here? I mean, Sonky could really put some hurt on. Yeah, oh gosh, he's going to be doing a drop there in a moment. Oh no, so now Sheth, hurry back to bottom left. Hurry, Sheth, hurry. Fortunately, it looks like Sheth is actually going to run in here with these small Zerglings and pick this off. So he's going to run the risk of losing this base yet again. There's the stem, picking it off. Too many points of vulnerability. Because, you know, if you watch Select play, Select's really good at hitting you all over the place. He'll drop over here and drop there and stem just 4 Marines and run in your front and pick off 6 drones. It's uncomfortable as hell to play against him, right? It feels awful. However, The important thing to note is Zerg is often creating his own points of vulnerability. I mean, if you have 3 expansions that are just on the map, you have 3 points of vulnerability. If you have some extra key structures on arbitrary creep in the middle of the map, you've created a 4th point of vulnerability. So here, we have basically 1. I would call these 2 bases 1 point of vulnerability because they're so close together. So having that Ultralisk Cavern there was another huge, just begging to be attacked location. And again, if we expand here, that's going to be awesome. That's going to be really reducing the number of places where we can actually be picked off. And you know, if we're building all these spine crawlers here, I would build a pool here, I would build an Ultra Cavern here, and I would leave a Broodlord here, and an Infestor here. How easy it is now for me to maintain focus. And I'm not going to lie. Okay, now that this expansion is dead, where should we expand as Sheth? We should expand frickin' here. Stop expanding there! Sheth! Right? He should really stop expanding there. At the same time, though, as much as I'm criticizing Sheth, Sheth overall is playing this relatively correctly. The idea of continuing to re-expand and play passively. We see one Sonky finally starting to drop down in the food count. He's at 138. Now re-expanding here. That's so rude. I can't believe you would do that. But now, hey, look at this. This is what you want to have happen. Yeah, try to drop. Try to do a drop. I don't think so. Huge army position in the bottom left. That's where it's pinned. It can't really do much. Sheth did not re-expand his main. That is a correct decision. Not because it is broke. But, you know, part of the reason is, yeah, because it's broke. But another reason is because it would be such a huge point of vulnerability. See, now we're seeing Sheth. He's just hanging out here. Yeah, my bases are here. I will just chill out. You might want to do something like maybe run some Zerglings up here, but maybe not necessarily an entire army. There's Sonky moving in. Oh, hey, 2 Broodlords to pick off this expansion. I love that. That's awesome. Hey, remember this right expansion? Yep, doing some damage here. Sonky trying to pick off the left here. Very redundant play from Sonky, but correct and redundant. Killing stuff off. Killing stuff off. And you know what's kind of humorous to me about this game is that the reason it looks so much like a slugfest is that it's repetitive mistakes and then good decisions by both players. Sheth making some good decisions, pulling back, playing defensively, then making some mistakes, spreading out himself a little bit too thin, taking expansions that aren't consistent with the mixture of units he's getting. Not doing enough scouting of expansions. But then when he does and just sends a couple of Zerglings there, suddenly gets a huge swell forward in terms of the lead. It's kind of funny in these long games like this. Some of the reasons why they go on so long is often players are in situations like this where, you know, it's not quite as tight in terms of the positioning and the placement. So now Sonky's going to try to do one of his infamous counterattacks. Oh my gosh, that would be so awesome if it hit, but it doesn't hit because you know what? Sheth is playing this very, very nicely. And oh, look at this. A small mini attack going up here. Drops that would be going on up at this corner. A Zergling, just a single Zergling that I'm trying to select. Yep, Predator Zergling doing some damage, some Vikings trying to spread out. And this is excessive. This is, again, opening yourself up just a little bit. Why not have Broodlords here with the rest of the Infestor army just knocking down at this expansion? One Sonky going to find a little bit of trouble with trying to expand there. We now see some battlecruisers coming out. And it's kind of funny because Zerg, I would say, just need to be more aggressive in a small general sense and a little tighter in terms of the expansion sense. And then would have been in fantastic shape. Like this, I'm wondering why we're doing without Overlord spread everywhere. Ooh, yeah, if Sheth had Overlord spread, that would be awesome. I would love some Overlord spread. But you know what, Sheth? Pulls right on back again. This expansion is dead. We don't need the whole army there. And now Sheth slowly getting repositioned. I mean, I want you to just note how good that was. How Sheth was just sort of like moving the army here and back and looking around and just sort of poking, just sort of like scouring. Maybe could have done some of that with Overlords, but the important thing is just not attacking, not going all in, not like suiciding at some expansion blindly. And now is in this glorious position. Oh, yeah. Oh, I love this army you're provided for me, Sonky. Oh, look at all that great EMP. Looks like it might not be enough. No, looks like Sonky gonna be able to take it. Not take it too well. Now we have BCs out on the field. And I would just like to note that in terms of Sonky's play, the way any harass-focused play should be is that I'm going to pick and prod and poke and then do a giant slam forward and crush. That is going to be the way I'm going to win. If you try to harass someone to death, you can end up in these awkward situations where you don't exactly have an army. Sonky nobly sacrificing some battlecruisers on accident. But I think we can finally see that Sheth is starting to get a little bit of a grip on his play. And the interesting thing to note is it's because the amount of vulnerable locations has dropped. This side is no longer a vulnerable spot because it's pretty much gone. This hasn't really been that vulnerable because it's kind of in the middle of the map. It's just been these two now. Now that this is gone and these expansions are gone, Sheth can easily leave his army in the bottom left corner and be fine. Killing stuff off, killing stuff off. And there's Sheth doing damage at the top. And I think it's pretty clear that Sheth has a little bit of an advantage. And now poor one Sonky is having the worst feeling in the world, which is where you have no bases and $1 million in the bank, and if you lose with $1 million in the bank, you cry. You just weep. More dropping going on by Sonky. Sheth, though, oh, look at this! Did not have all his units spread out again. Has a very small focused set of units here to defend, a small focused set of vulnerabilities. I'm going to send in a small set of units. Take it on out. And now we see a re-expand here. Why is this not here, Sheth? Sean, I'm going to be calling you on Skype after this and crying little Zerg tears. This poor expansion, this poor, clearly awesome expo for you. No. Now finally cleaning everything up. I would label this cleanup now that he's sort of withstood the test of time. More units trying to swing in, but very few Zerglings actually being produced in this mix. There's 11 Roaches and 23 Zerglings. It's not like the 115 Zergling mix that you see pop out in a lot of circumstances. Sonky's just kind of going all over the place at this point. More continued dropping here. Hey, you know what's funny? This is okay, but again, it was one of those points of vulnerability. And then when Zerg goes over to defend that, uh-oh, here is this little issue here. So the funny lesson to sort of learn from this game is that Sheth overall did the underlying correct move, which was to just continue to secure bases to get a more and more and more intimidating mixture, less Roaches, less Zerglings, and more Ultras, more Corruptors, more Mutalisks, more, not Guardians, Broodlords. Just getting more and more and more and more and more of that. However, by creating these more points of vulnerability, I mean, hey, all the units were over here to defend against this drop, and then we lost this expansion again. But because Sheth held down like a boss with all them correct units, he's in good shape. Yeah. Man, what a slugfest. What a shiny example of two players just trying to bludgeon each other to death with one arm. Just bam, bam, just smashing each other down. Poor one Sonky, my heart bleeds for him. My heart just bleeds for that poor individual. It looks like the good old no-base Zerg. I'm starting to see what I mean. This is kind of some avoidable stuff, like losing this many bases. This is actually kind of a close ending. Wait, does Sheth win this game? Sheth is good at teasing me. I'm actually going to stop the analysis for a moment. Are you kidding me? Is this game still going on? The long-range mining from the Planetary Fortress? Sheth having one base? Oh man, could I just note for the record that this expansion has not yet been taken? Could I just spend a brief moment of time to note that? Whew, baby. Oh, and the battlecruiser swinging in? Ugh. Now it's going to get a little rat-tatted at. Uh-oh. Pull back, team! Pull back. Sheth is going to have a total of 1.5 bases. That's good. In the unit counting station, we see 27 drones and 31 workers. And, oh, it's some transfuses. Plus, 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 speeding things along. The Zerglings end up running in. Yeah, look, small set of Zerglings could have shut down this mining for a while. 2 Roaches could have shut down this mining for a while. Big army, a confrontation. Oh, Sheth. Still doesn't win. Oh my gosh, Ghost swinging in. Oh, 1 nuke, 2 nuke. Red nuke, blue nuke. Oh. Oh! And he finishes it in time. Holy crap. Lol, GG indeed. Man, that game was longer than it needed to be. Man, that game was so much longer than it needed to be. My God, that was just the same thing again and again and again and again and again. It's kind of funny to note how a game can just go on for so long when really, because it's due to the same sort of fundamental mistake. Wow. Huh. Holy crap. Let's take some questions. That was exhausting. My gosh, I watched part of that game and was like, yeah, this will be great. It's just brutal. Oh my gosh. Oh, Sheth, you poor thing, man. You must have been just sweating after that game. Alright, yeah, let's start taking some questions. Oh, man. Whoa. Whoa. Let's go ahead and start taking questions. Yeah. Yeah. Make sure questions aren't paragraphs, because otherwise the question grabber won't get him. Oh my gosh. Alright, here's a question from Agro Laser. Dear Day 9, when you are behind in bases and getting bases denied, how can you come back from this sort of situation? Which is exactly what we saw here. What you should do is begin to scout for expansions to try to like deny some of those, because one of the easiest ways to lose a game is, you know, let's say you're on 3 bases and he's on 2 and he starts doing some aggression and he picks off one of your bases and he's starting to harass another one. You're trying to defend, so it's like 2 base on 2 base, you're defending, and whew, alright, I held it off. Let's go scout. And then you see that he has like another base, another expansion up and running. Anytime you're starting to feel the pressure, start scouting for more expansions. I want that to be a trigger in your mind. And if you are behind in bases, an easy thing to do is just to begin prodding all his points of vulnerability, right? Do a little 8 Zergling drop in his main, and an 8 Zergling drop on that expansion, and a little drop on that side. If he is low on bases, you need to crack that with a huge frontal push. You can't possibly hope to crack that with little tiny drops. I mean, imagine a 1-base Terran trying to do a little Baneling drop at the back and a little Zergling counterattack at the front. He just has too little surface area. So we saw that all the times that Sheth started to take the lead was when he had a couple Zerglings moving this way, a few moving that way. When he fell behind, it's when his whole army was trying to go out to all these disparate locations. The more expansions you have, the more vulnerable you are to harass. So if he's more ahead in terms of bases, then try to harass more. Try to split up more. Try to make faster units to do the aggression. Don't let your slower units move out if you're trying to get those expansions. 2.718. Day 9, is there an achievement for collecting 18,000 minerals in a ladder game? There should be. Because I would love it if right in the middle of a tournament game, it's like, achievement unlock, you're fucking boring. 20,000 minerals collected. Yes. I will call him to ask him why he never took that base. Why did he end up doing that? Here's a good question from Varnicate. Is it more important to have a build based off what your opponent is doing, or to have a solid one of your own? It looks like Sheth favors the former, having that sort of fluidity. So there's a whole lot of theories as to how build orders should work and what they should be doing. Just to sort of note what Varnicate is doing to explicate that a bit more. It's that you really should either be, or there's styles where it's like a huge timing push, like I'm going to turtle on 2 bases and then get this army and move out. That would be like your standard Colossus Void Ray style mixture. Or I want to do what Sheth's doing and sort of like hold and defend and see what's up and sort of bend. The important thing to note is that it a lot of times is stylistic, but most of the time is related to who has map control and who actually is able to make those sorts of huge decisions. For instance, if you're Terran against a Zerg who's going mute a Zergling, you don't really have the option to do much, because if you move out, he'll kill it with Mutalisk if it's too small. If you try to do a drop, he'll kill it with Mutalisk. If you're in the wrong position with those Hellions, he'll kill it with those faster Zerglings and the Mutalisks. So that's why a lot of times with Terran, you see him hold, 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 hold. Here comes my huge push. End up throwing it down. The overarching idea is that no matter what is going on, there is a huge process of refinement. Sheth talks a little freeform, you know, like, yeah, I like to spend all my drones, you know, make sure all my larva's done. That's the underlying principle. And you'll see him do reactionary things, but when you watch Sheth play like 100 games, you'll see him do the kind of same sort of thing. in the same situation. Oh yeah, oh he's doing this strategy that has like a whole lot of drops. Well, I'll be getting infestors in this way. That's what I'll be doing. You'll watch it again and again and again, and more infestors and more infestors and more infestors. In general, you'll see Ling, Roach, Infestor coming out of Sheth. Sure, there might be him getting Roaches first, or Zerglings with speed first, or Infestors first, but it'll all sort of dump back into that same position again. Oh. I will take this final question from Nutshells. So, Dear Day 9, what would you do in this situation that your bases are so far apart and you keep getting harassed? It is okay to take losses and to kind of regroup and make sure you're continuing to expand. That's what we ended up seeing. And there's a whole lot of ideas of where my army moves should protect where my expansions are. That's why you see a lot of people sometimes cut down and then go to an opponent's base, as opposed to just go to an opponent's base. Because by cutting down and moving inward at another angle, they've protected an expansion behind. Yeah, alright. Yeah, oh yeah. That was one of the most exhausting games I've ever seen. Woo, baby. I'm ending this daily. Next week is 2v2 week starting on Sunday. Please tweet me or post on Facebook, facebook.com/day9tv. Yeah, yeah. I think that's it. Yeah. Newbie Tuesday. Newbie Tuesday is going to be games of you losing to teams that have a Zerg in them when you don't have a Zerg in them. Submit those to Tuesday at day9.tv. You losing to Zerg Terran, Zerg Protoss, or Zerg Zerg teams when you are Protoss Protoss, Terran Terran, or Protoss Terran. Please submit those to Tuesday at day9.tv, as Zerg does have a very funky functionality in them 2v2s. For Fun Day Monday, please submit a game of the worst 2v2 partner of all time, and we'll have all that sorts of fun goodness. And last but not least, there is now the voluntary subscription for Day9 TV. Yes, indeed, it is all voluntary. You just subscribe in the link on Justin TV. And it'll start off, the only feature that you'll be immediately getting is the advantage of no ads, and you'll get a fancy little chat badge icon, but there'll be more fun things planned, such as little events where, you know, you get to play mana battles with me. That's just the beginning. There'll be more and more stuff going on. It will always stay $5. Yeah. All right. I'm leaving. Goodbye, guys. I'm done. Au revoir.